Welcome back to Nick Lenz's Doctor Who review, episode number 74. This we're discussing, believe it or not, it's the final story of the East Bay story, because that was quite obvious. Released in the period of January 3rd to 3rd to 24th of 1981. This is also has a few other things with it. Aside from the fact it's the final story of the East Base trilogy, it is also the third to last story of season 18 and Tom Baker's entire run, because he has two more stories after this. One I've covered, Legopolis, excellent story. And by the next episode, for episode 75 of the series, I will review his penultimate story, The Keeper of Traken. Would I review any more afterwards? Do I have more aside from this one and the course Keeper Trekking? No, I'm out of Tom Baker stories. Basically, after that, we just be three Peter Davison stories and another Doctor that comes after him, which I've never talked about his character before, and it's going to be quite strange. So, this one, it seems like, though, we have a bit of a skip here, because in the last story, where the doctor's like, oh, I would take you home, and then apparently Adric's like, oh, he's just a companion now. Okay. I'm like, did something happen between these stories that basically where Adric just begged him to take along, and, well, he takes along. We also have some weird stuff in this one here, where we have this other ship, which, when I read it online, apparently, this one caused a lot of problems and headaches for the production team for this one, when I read. Yeah, Jonathan Turner was not very happy with some of the stuff here. As a matter of fact, the director of the story, who is Paul Joyce, briefly got fired and then rehired because they did not understand how his camera script worked. Yeah. Now, well, there is one thing I forgot to mention. This is the source no one before. It is the final appearance in the main Doctor Who series of Romana and K9 Mark II. Yep. Now, I tried to find the reason why that she left the show. I looked all over the Wiki page. Maybe there's something there. The only theory I can have is that she left because she was planning to marry Tom Baker the following year. That is possible. But in actuality, I don't really know what the reason was why she left. K9 left because basically Jonathan didn't want him anymore. So once he left, I'm sure there probably was, I guess, somewhere, okay, we got rid of Mark II. Maybe we can bring in Mark because kids really enjoy K9. But Jonathan was like, nope. Once he left, we're done with K9. Well, until we ran off a spin-off years later, a story called K9 and Friends, which is a very forgettable boarded pilot episode, which I've seen that. It's a story also features the return of Sarah Jane Smith to the franchise. I'll discuss it more whenever I get a chance to watch it again, because I've seen it's a very okay story. And now the thing is, that story is surprisingly canon. Unlike other stuff that's not part of the main Doctor Who series this period of time, where if it's not main Doctor Who, it's not canon. Well, some people do form some parts of canon, but not really. There are some things the show has basic show inspiration from, some ignored, some stories. For certain characters, but not down ignoring great stories. Like, as far as I can tell when it comes to Sylvester McCoy's novels, as far as I can tell, they're canon. There's nothing really mentioned from those stories actually mentioned in the main series, so you could assume they're canon. Kind of the same thing with the audio dramas. As far as in the case of one Doctor is concerned, the 8th Doctor, all of his stories are canon because he actually mentioned in Night of the Doctor all of his companions he had throughout the entirety of his era during the whole Big Finish stuff. So what's the story of this one? Well, they're looking for something to get out of this space they're in. Is E-space? Well, they describe this as sort of the border between E-space and N-space. It's basically a white void. Yes. And also these creatures known as are these bad guys? No, it's the human looking characters. Which, that's interesting. And they're greedy. Yeah, and they describe that their navigator is worth a king's ransom. And there's also mention of bonuses. I'm like, yeah, this little plot device been reused for Earthshock. Or talking about a bonus, but not for the entire crew, but for the captain who's in a big hurry to leave. Because costing her, or basically her bonus, because she really wants that bonus so badly. Yeah, I was expecting bonuses. Yeah, as for what they're hunting for, not exactly sure per se. Though sadly by the end of the story, the ship was destroyed due to their own incompetence. Yeah, and also the fact this crew is very stupid. Like, oh yeah, open the door, and of course they can't understand simple phrases. It's like basically the people who hired the story. Actually, not actually. I'm going to blame that. I blame basically the writing, where it's like, oh, and by the way, what they had these two maintenance guys. One of whom just didn't read the script. He just basically read the story because he always wanted to work on Doctor Who, and that was one of the maintenance guys. It was what is his name here? I think it's the actor played. No, not Lane. No, not this guy. No. Aldo? Yeah, the actor played Aldo, Freddie Early. Well, I read the guy did not read the script. He just really wanted to appear in Doctor Who so badly. So here he is appearing in his one and only time. He appeared in the main series. Yes, it's like he desperately wanted to basically do with him. There's also a coin flipping in this one, which also Adric starts doing, and after this story, he doesn't do it again after this one. Yeah, it's like he develops a habit here. Also, he's more tolerable in this story than he was in the last one. It's almost like, yeah. Kana at one point basically breaks down due to what is described as a time wind, which he is affected by it, along with the Doctor. How? Because his hand touched it. So there is a bit of time until we go into a castle, look like some medieval castle, like not so much on the outside, but inside look like a very nice place. It's been covered in cobwebs. And he just follows the mirror, follows the guy back in time to the part when they had Empire. And apparently the humans in the world, they're kept as slaves and they overthrown with robots, which is not the kind of couple in present day. Yeah, and it's also about, well, pickles, whatever. And then they also mention the whole thing about distance in this episode, where at one point space started compressing this area, and eventually, well, by the way, Romana finds some interesting stuff in this story. She plays a big role in this story. Given the fact that it's her last story, of course she play a big role. Though I'll get to the ending bit. So she finds out that the let's call them the mercenaries, where their ship is made of dwarf star. A very unstable, basically a very highly containable substance, and they also got very gigantic warp drives. You're thinking, warp drive? What is this, Star Trek? No, I wouldn't be surprised they borrowed that term from Star Trek, given the fact Doctor Who and Star Trek tend to borrow stuff all the time. Though I can confirm that the Borg are not based upon the Cybermen, because Melissa Grass told me that, because she said it did not come to mind when she created the Borg. Because I did ask her that, because there's been fan comparisons for years about that, and I dispelled the rumor by asking the writer herself. Good at me for doing that. Yeah. And also, apparently, in their cargo hold, they had several of these people, which they get freed, not by the Doctor, but by basically... And of course, they try to stop them, and of course, they're like, nah, just let them kill themselves. And they do. By the end of the story, they kill themselves. Though I do appreciate the fact that in the ruined castle, that they were cobwebs. That apparently the captain's had to make himself a home by putting his feet on the table, which I thought was so funny. One thing that was really jarring about this episode when they switched from the past to the present, where clearly this thing had like this big, huge thing of ham, which I've had ham a lot like that before. It was like, oh, it just gone. Like, what the heck? And eventually the doctors kind of brought back the present day by Ramona of all people. Adric himself doesn't do a lot in this story. Like, he just follows on Kanan the whole story. He walks away, and at one point, Kanan is mistreated by the mercenaries. Whereas, like, calling Master, like, because he has to go because he doesn't know what to do. So he gets tossed. Yes, K9, you basically toss a computer outside your ship because you don't know what to do with the damn thing. Yeah, but this... And then, of course, basically, Ryan decides to lead this path that she's still go back to Gallifrey. And she basically is there to help free the people. Now, from what I've heard, that both Tom Baker and Leela War were not happy with this scene at all. As a matter of fact, I had heard, of course, I read online, apparently they were constantly complaining about the script for this story. That of course, the changes were addressed and they were made. The fact that something need to be changed, and of course, we got the workable story. Yeah, well, the writing also had basically come down, basically calm these two down. So apparently, this is you could think of this as the first story featuring Adric, and he was an annoyance. Not really. As a matter of fact, he doesn't let's say play a big role in the story. He's just there just to wander about. He of course rescues Romana for like, oh my god, this is like the third straight story keeps saving her. Yes, you could say this is only contribution whole episode just rescuing her. And by the way, when she leaves, well, she returns in expanded media stuff, in audio dramas and novels. Even the actress herself reprises the role. And I found this story to be quite interesting, to say the least. Not a very confusing story, just a good conclusion to this trilogy, but we get epilogue and keep her tracking. Which I'm very much looking forward to reviewing that because that is going to be something quite interesting to talk about. But one interesting feature of this thing I had to check out because it sounds interesting. Leela's wardrobe. Because if you watch any story where Leela War is playing Romana, in all appearance of the course of 2 seasons, starting from Destiny Daleks up until this very story, including Shot in here too, where we talk about every single outfit she wore throughout the entire series. Now, she did describe it here where the outfit in this story, she loved the outfit. She did not like, the only thing she liked about this outfit was the shoes. She loved the outfit being very comfortable to wear. And apparently, according to the cast people, they say she's the most easiest actress to walk around. Yeah, nothing to change. Probably because she was skinny. That's probably the reason why. Yeah, and like every story, she basically wore a different outfit. Like, they talk about a couple times she wore a schoolgirl outfit, like in City of Death and in Magos. The first one, she did it because she wore those when she was a kid. In the case of the first one, Destiny Daleks, they picked out because they wanted her to be sort of like a female Tom Baker, but I thought it would be quite hilarious. They probably didn't feel as though it would be as interesting for her to wear Tom Baker's outfit. By the way, here's something quite interesting about this story. If you watch this story on a coat rack in this TARDIS, in this console room, on the TARDIS, on this coat rack, we have the Doctor's brown coat, his multicolored scarf that people love to see wear, but his hat's not here. Yes, for some reason his red hat is in this scene. Yeah, as far as I can tell, there's no explanation for this at all. It was not there in the last story. And then, of course, basically, I remember seeing this thing in Legopolis when I reviewed it. I think it was a while ago I reviewed it. But this is surprising. This is probably in the main story. Probably the first people who've seen that outfit since Shada. Well, if you think about airing-wise, since Horns of Naimon. Which, I want to talk about more stories related when I talk about more of it, because Some of the stories now, from what they describe for this one, is that they picked this out because it's more a finale for this one. Now, the only outfit in particular she was not that they some people were not a fan of was the outfit she wore for Creature the Pit. They found that would be, well, aside from the fact it's very revealing, one of two outfits would show up for cleavage, but some people were not very happy with the outfit. In the case of the outfit she wore in these three stories, in particular, well, in the case of the previous one, she wore two outfits, which apparently she loved the dress that she was put in for the sacrifice scene, is what she described it as. Her main outfit, she did not have a problem with it, though apparently, unintentionally, during her time on Doctor Who, she apparently started a trend where people wore knickerbockers. Yes, apparently people started that. She inadvertently started that trend, kind of like how Farrah Fawcett had that Fawcett hairstyle back in the late 70s. Yeah, but if you're like, I found that feature to be so interesting because every time she shows up, she wears a completely different attire. And they brought in a costume designer from the current Doctor Who, and where her outfits she picked out for Billy Pepper and the actress we Arthur Jones. Basically, the inspiration from this era for further outfits. Well, and of course, because of the fact everyone likes wearing jeans nowadays, which that kind of is true. But yeah, I kind of enjoyed the story for what it was. Surprisingly, there's no major special effects in the story. Not really. You think about it, like the only special effects was an explosion at the end of the story. Yeah, but nothing really terrible about this one. But for a conclusion to the East Bay trilogy is good. I thought there'd be a step up in State of Decay, which was kind of weird of a story. This one felt like a good story forward. It just the humans who are not basically the creature, the Doctor, Adric, just the main three in the new alien creatures, they were fine. It's the human alien, the humanoid creatures, the one look like humans. The captain is like a complete dictator in his own ship, and his bridge is basically a catwalk. Yes, seriously, his bridge is a catwalk. And when he meets Romana, they just walk up to the TARDIS. And he's like, oh, and Chris mentioned something about her ship. And instead of basically, just escort her down the engine, nope, they shoved the navigator, and of course, to get that gate thing that this whole thing is after. They also have this weird effect in the story where there's a small bit of the story where the scenery is all in black and white for some reason. Even Romana's last scene, basically, where it's in black and white. I don't know what the reason was for that. But, all in all, a good story. I'll wrap it up here before I get late. Go ahead and do one Common Corn and do Mushoku Tensei. Okay, next view. Bye.